Hey everyone, I'm Megyn Kelly. Welcome to the Megyn Kelly Show. Oh, we have so much to go over. An unbelievable day one at the Democratic National Convention. And by unbelievable, I mean we got to watch a final knife in the back to the man who we are told is still the leader of the free world and, according to the Democrats, who saved democracy. And this is their thanks. Last month, the Democrats pushed Joe Biden right out of the Democratic nomination for a second term. Then they told us he would get a big celebration on night one of the DNC, the prelude to his ascension to Mount Rushmore. Instead, he didn't even make it into the primetime. It was bad enough they had him booked to speak on Monday, which is where the C-stringers go, but they moved him. He got delayed right out of the primetime by a lot. In fact, so much so that his speech ended on day two of the convention. They did not put him up there until 11:30 East Coast time. I guess they don't care if the people in Georgia hear him, the people in North Carolina hear him, the people in New York and DC who drive the news cycles hear him. Okay, fine. It's your party. It's not to mention it was way past the guy's preferred bedtime. I mean, we heard him himself on that call with the governors when he was trying to assure everybody he could do a second term, saying, I really can't do things past 8 p.m. anymore. I'm going to make sure I don't do that. And what do? They book him to start at 10 and they don't let him start speaking until 11:30. Instead, we heard a long list of no-names get up there trying to make their own. Who wanted to hear from Chris Coons, for the love of God? Who gives a shit what he has to say? Put on Joe Biden. He's the sitting president. I'm not his chief defender, but it's the least you could have done. Just to pay the guy his respect for a lifetime of service to the Democrat Party. But no, they needed to put the final treads on Joe Biden's back. That's amazing. He got up there. There wasn't exactly a passing of the torch. He did say some nice things about Kamala. His proudest thing was to make her his vice president and that, he saved democracy. She's going to preserve it. But the speech was mostly focused on his own lengthy political career. It was his swan song moment. And for most of it, he was shouting at us as Dark Brandon returned. There's the Bruce Wayne and then the Batman character. Only Batman is a lot cooler than Dark Brandon. Well, the darker version of Joe Biden was there for virtually the entire time, railing against former President Trump and doing so with over and over and over again, lies that have been debunked.
Donald Trump said, and I quote, "There are very fine people on both sides. My God." That's what he said. That is what he said and what he meant. Oh, from his own chief of staff, the four-star General John Kelly, that Trump, when in Europe, would not go to the grave sites in France. The brave service members who gave their lives to this country. He called them suckers and losers. Who in the hell does he think he is? Who does he think he is? He's promising a bloodbath if he loses, in his words.
I mean, literally none of that is true. All of it is out of context. Find people on both sides. I mean, how many times does that need to be debunked? Including by Snopes, which is the Democrats' favorite fact-checking machine. He keeps telling, he doesn't give a shit. The alternate realities, according to Joe Biden. Where are all the excited fact checkers? Where are they? Come on. You love to fact check everybody on the right. Do your business. Bloodbath. He was talking about the economy and what was going to happen in the auto industry if that was Trump talking, if Joe Biden got reelected. We know all this. Dictator on day one was said jokingly, laughingly to Sean Hannity on camera about what he would do at the border. Kind of like what Joe Biden did with all of his executive orders undoing Trump's border policy. This is so ridiculous. Okay. Despite evidence to the contrary, Joe Biden did want you to know he's really not angry about what was done to him at all.
It's been the honor of my lifetime to serve as your president. I love the job, but I love my country more. I love my country more. And all this talk about how I'm angry with all those people who said I should step down. That's not true.
Sure, Jan. And in perhaps the most stunning scene of the entire night, there was former Speaker Nancy Pelosi, Brutus herself, waving a "We Love Joe" sign with the big smile, at least as far as the Botox would allow, like trying to look like she's his number one fan. Wait till you, look at her. Front row. We love Joe. We love Joe. We love. It's like something out of a horror movie where the person's like, we love you, as they stick the knife in and turn it, and you're dying. And she's like, we love you, but I love you. That's like what happened there. It was, the whole humiliation made me uncomfortable. I got to be honest. Something out last night to the effect of this, like watching a groom who was dumped on the morning of his wedding day, who then is forced to go to the wedding anyway and watch his bride marry someone else and cheer for it. That's how the whole thing made me feel. He didn't want this. He didn't want to be deposed from the nomination he had won legitimately. I get why it happened, but he didn't want it. He had to show up. He had to say nice things about Kamala. He did that, but they kept Grandpa in a green room for hours, 81 years old, well past Matlock, tapioca time, and then forced him to go out there at 11:30 East Coast time, which is his time. He lives in DC and Delaware, and do this speech. No wonder he was angry. President Biden now begins a week-long tour to support Kamala Harris. No. He's being shipped off on vacation. Vacation from what? He's literally been sitting in Rehoboth, Delaware for weeks doing nothing. We read you the Real Clear Politics rundown of his schedule in August. He's been doing nothing every day. President Biden's schedule, nothing. Like one phone call, one ceremonial appearance. So now he needs a vacation from all that. Who is president? Who is commander-in-chief? He's going to California. He's going to enjoy the beautiful sunsets, seashores. His party moves forward, though, with the coronation of Vice President Kamala Harris. And that's just the start of what we witnessed last night. I got a lot of thoughts, and so do the fellas. They're here from the Ruthless program: Josh Holmes, Michael Duncan, John Ashbrook, and the man known to his minions as Comfortably Smug. Don't miss a moment. Subscribe to this show on YouTube and follow me on Insta, Facebook, and X. You didn't vote for this economic downturn, right? The high inflation. But you could be paying for it at the pump right now, at the grocery store, and with growing stacks of unpaid bills. It's stressful. Financial stress actually can be crushing. And one solution could be donewithdebt.com. Done with Debt created new aggressive strategies designed to get you out of debt permanently, without bankruptcy or loans. Done with Debt can stand between you and your bill collectors. They negotiate with your creditors to write off balances, cut interest, and stop penalties. And the best news is Done with Debt is accepting new clients right now. You do need to hurry, though, because some of their debt strategies are time sensitive, and you don't want to miss out. So let Done with Debt hit the debt reset button for you and make your money yours again. Visit donewithdebt.com, donewithdebt.com, or call 1-888-322-1054 right now. 1-888-322-1054. Chat with one of their debt relief strategists for free. Donewithdebt.com. I'm so happy you guys are here.
What a rundown.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty good analysis of what had happened.
They're so nasty. And just as they had me feeling sorry for Joe Biden, he got up there and told all those lies. And I was like, he deserved it. What did you guys think of last night?
Yeah. Well, look, I particularly liked your jilted groom analogy. That was pretty good. I've always kind of wanted to go to a wedding where somebody doesn't show up and you have to look around at the crowd and see how they take it. This is what Democrats basically did to him. They just ragdolled him in public. Monday, Republicans put the Teamsters guy they didn't want the rest of the party to hear on Monday night. Mm-hmm. At least they had the common decency to do it within the confines of the hours that people still watch television. They didn't even do that to Joe Biden. With any other sitting president, you would imagine that you are introducing the new nominee, right? If not for Joe Biden, Kamala Harris wouldn't be within a country mile of a Democratic nomination for president. And yet, Monday night, late night. And also, was there no editors on that speech? The thing was like, what, 45 minutes or something like that?
On and on and on. In the jilted groom is a very good analogy. Another one that comes to mind, I don't know if you've ever saw that old movie Best in Show by Christopher Guest.
Of course.
But there's a vignette toward the beginning of it where there's this lady who's taken a tycoon, this old tycoon for all he's worth, and she's sitting next to him and she's like, people say he's so much older than me, but really, I just can't keep him off of me. And the whole time, she's just taking his money, and the guy can't even talk, and he's just sitting there.
Jennifer Coolidge.
And it's just, this is what Democrats are doing to their president.
It's a really pathetic swan song to a long political career, shuffled to midnight. First night of the debate, standing on that stage and saying, "Democracy won." Sitting on that stage as the person who won all the votes in the primary, and talking about how we're going to anoint Kamala Harris, who won 0 votes. How is that democracy winning?
It is incredible.
And Duncan, also honesty matters. He actually said honesty matters right before he said, he's the guy who said there are fine people on both sides. Let's make him run for president.
I would also point out that he said the people outside have a point.
Oh, yeah.
The Hamas protesters.
And then
we have that.
We have that.
Hold on. Let's play that. Let's play that because he had his own both sides moment last night talking about those pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protesters. Watch it.
Those protesters out in the street, they have a point. A lot of innocent people are being killed on both sides.
He literally said both sides.
He ad-libbed that. He said both sides about the pro-Hamas people who are out there saying, get yourself beaten up by the cops for your back-to-school outfit.
Smuggles, what's your take?
Well, I mean, I think everyone is saying that it was kind of like a failed night one. I think it was a tremendous success. This was Nancy Pelosi's humiliation ritual. She wanted to spike the football. And like, even when she was getting interviewed by some reporters, she was like, I've got no problems with Joe. It was just his campaign I had some issues with. Like, she's putting in everyone's face that she ended this guy's career. So she absolutely, got what she wanted out of that. She had him shuffled onto stage at 11:30 to admit defeat. And in so many ways, he admitted defeat. When he was angry and shouting about Donald Trump, the only thing that came to mind for me was, wow, he's mad at a guy who so thoroughly beat him, he surrendered and dropped out.
Yeah.
He seemed small on that stage because he couldn't cut it. He couldn't make it to face Donald Trump. He had to throw in the towel.
Well, it also proves that the Democrats know he's a political vulnerability. They don't want Kamala Harris associated with him inside a country mile.
All right.
The more she's associated as the current vice president and not this change agent with all these new positions, the worse her electoral prospects are.
Yeah, it was also just hilarious what a fictional betrayal all of this was.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it started at the very beginning, and then it was like a cavalcade of ridiculous has-been politicians, which if you look at the lineup, 4 days of that. Mm-hmm. But like you get Maxine Waters up on stage.
Yeah.
Like, are you talking? Oh, yeah. A lot of hope for the future with that situation. Right? I mean, if you're going to choreograph something, if you're going to choreograph something for hope and change, that ain't it. That ain't it.
Well, what about, there was there were 2 touching moments, and I'll get to them because I do, whether it's Democrat or Republican, like the moments that make me feel something. And there was the one moment where Joe Biden came on stage after his daughter Ashley had introduced him, and they embraced just like by the arms and spoke to each other, and he cried. And that just is like a human. You're like, oh, that's sweet. But then he gets up there and starts spewing all this nastiness. You're like, oh, okay, not sweet. But I was still reeling from her remarks because she gets up there. And of course, you guys know, we've covered it here on the MK show. She's the one who wrote this diary in which she said she took inappropriate showers with him when she was a girl. That she said they're probably not appropriate. So she gets up there and she began her remarks as follows. I have this memory. I was 8 years old. We're like,
oh no, he's going to do it.
Oh no.
My God, she's going to do it.
Oh my God. Every muscle tensed up. I was like, oh no, Ashley, this is not the time. Anyway, that was one moment. I'll get to the other nice moment in a minute. But here's the other thing. it was a parade of like fakes, phonies, and falsehoods. Yeah. Now, we talked about some of the falsehoods with Joe Biden, that just like litany of lies that he just keeps telling and he can get away with. But the weirdness of like the presenters and the lies that they were telling and just like the you've got to be effing kidding me moments that I had watching them. I mean, I sat and I watched that whole damn thing from 8 p.m. forward. I was exhausted. And there is this woman, I'd never seen this person before, Mallory McMorrow, Michigan State Senator. No one's seen this person before.
Yeah. Was that the lizard tongue lady?
That was lizard tongue. All right. So first of all, I don't understand why she borrowed my wardrobe from my moot court outfit in 1993. But she definitely did.
My God. That is a murder right there. That is a murder.
Okay. But she was doing the weirdest stuff with her tongue. And worse than any of that was the cluelessness of her warnings to Democrats about what Donald Trump might do if he became president again. Listen.
Donald Trump would be able to weaponize the Department of Justice to go after his political opponents. He could even turn the FBI into his own personal police force. That is not how it works in America.
Oh,
that's how it works in dictatorships.
Oh my gosh.
So we're in a dictatorship.
Hello, pot.
He might even take a misdemeanor and turn it into 40 felony. Charge it in New York.
Or send his FBI down to your home and raid it and then parade out the evidence for a photo op that is not representative of what they found. That kind of making the FBI your own personal agent, Mallory. And I'm sorry, you can't see the whole outfit, but she was wearing dark tights with inappropriate shoes under her dark dress. It's a no.
Inappropriate shoes. You know what? Here, my favorite thing about Dem conventions, and it kind of started with like Mario Cuomo. It was maybe before that, but my earliest memory was like Mario Cuomo, and then clearly Barack Obama in 2004. There's always this person who nobody's heard of who attempts to sort of capture something that they have absolutely no business capturing.
Yeah.
Like the talent of like Cuomo in that convention, or Obama in 04 was obvious, and it vaulted them to national stardom and eventually 2 terms as president for Obama. But like this lady, you know for a fact, spent the last month thinking like, all right, I'm really going to lean into this because this is my moment. Like I too could be president if I just go out and just slam it.
I think that's a huge problem, is that especially after the Barack Obama 2004 moment, you have all these backbenchers who are like, it could be me.
Yeah.
I could beat that guy.
Yeah.
I go up there, I give a great speech, and the next day I'm going to be president. And it's not
So
the case.
true. Wait, so here, let's look at the lizard tongue. We need to show the audience what we're talking about, because I think Mallory had a case of the dry mouth. That's my Mallory. There's medication that can help you with that. You don't have to live like this. Save yourself.
Also, just Rubio a water or something. Save us from this thing.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Okay, but on your point, guys, about wannabe stars, that leads me to AOC. Okay. When I saw people on the internet praising her last night, even some Republicans, like, oh, that was a great speech. I thought, have you never actually seen an effective female public speaker? Like they mistake energy or like enthusiasm for effectiveness. I mean, anyone can get up there and shout at you. She can shout at you. It doesn't make you a good public speaker. It was like an assault. It was, right? Don't you feel assaulted by what I just did? That's how I felt listening to her. So I have a whole theory on her, and I'm going to walk you through my theory. And now I want your take. Now,
okay.
So I'm going to start with what I think she was going for, AOC, which this is what she was going for. Smug just made a reference to it, and it has to do with then regular Barack Obama before he ran for president in 2004 at the DNC. This is what made him a star, this moment.
I say to them tonight, there is not a liberal America and a conservative America. There is the United States of America. There is not a black America and a white America and Latino America and Asian America. There's the United States. of America. The pundits like to slice and dice our country into red states and blue states, red states for Republicans, blue states for Democrats. But I've got news for them, too. We worship an awesome God in the blue states, and we don't like federal agents poking around in our libraries in the red states.
Okay, he would be canceled for saying that today.
Yeah, you'd get booed off the stage if he said that.
The convention, their convention today has these diversified groups meeting all day. The LGBTQ caucus and the Black caucus and the Hispanic caucus and there's not a white caucus. But anyway, okay, so that's Barack Obama, who was then an Illinois state senator in 2004, made himself a star. That's what AOC was going for. That's what they all go for. They fail. There's only one Barack Obama. There will never be another Barack Obama. I'm sorry, find your own style. You're not good at imitation. Here was AOC's attempt, and pay particular attention to the fake accent that comes in toward the end.
In Kamala Harris, we have a chance to elect a president who is for the middle class because she is from the middle class. And I, for one, am tired of hearing about how a two-bit union buster thinks of himself as more of a patriot than the woman who fights every single day to lift working people out from under the boots of greed, trampling on our way of life. Ever since I got elected, Republicans have attacked me by saying that I should go back to bartending. But let me tell you, I'm happy to any day of the week because there is nothing wrong with working for a living.
Cool. Get me a skinny margarita. That's what she was going for. She was going for Barack Obama. But this is what she reminded me of. I mean, entirely. I give you Hillary Baldwin.
I want you guys to realize that we have 7 kids.
Oh, no.
And you being here to escort them to school and to be there when they come home is not good. So on a human
This woman's
level,
not Spanish.
you guys know I'm not going to say anything to you. You know that. So please, leave my family in peace and let this all play out. Okay? So let my kids come home and you stay away from them. Because they ask me, Mommy, what are these people doing?
Wait,
And it's a very hard thing
she's
to have
not
to try to
Spanish
explain. So
speaking.
please, go home. Because I'm not going to say anything, and Alec is not going to say anything.
She's like, por favor.
How you say cucumber. And there was this is my final soundbite in this little riff. So she was a cross between Hilaria, who went to a fancy boarding school in either Boston or Rhode Island and isn't Spanish at all. And also this guy. You may remember him from World War II as the leader of Italy.
Megyn
What do you
is
think?
just breaking out the 50
Yeah,
cal.
this is hot fire today.
Wow.
Agree or disagree?
I'm conflicted about
Agree.
AOC. I agree. I agree with what you were saying, but I'm conflicted about sort of who she is and how. I don't think there's anybody who better captures the ethos of today's Democratic Party than AOC. I mean, we may think it's absolutely ridiculous, but that is entirely consistent with everything that you see from the very top to the very bottom, from the center left to the progressive left. I mean, everything is captured by who AOC is. And I think this convention is actually a part of that, right? There's no real attempt to explain to the center of the electorate why it is that everything has sucked so bad under Joe Biden. It's basically inventing a new reality, throwing some yelling at you, telling you you're going to fight for stuff, and then just kind of expecting people to get in line behind somebody who's never gotten a single primary vote. Right?
There's no incentive for them to correct. because if you followed Twitter last night, the media was just glomming all over her. They were saying how great she was, and this is the best speech ever. So why would they ever course correct? Because the feedback loop they get is just nothing but positive.
Well, and she was sort of alluding to this dignity of work, which, like, I think is central to the American ethos. Isn't really a Democrat thing or a Republican thing. But instead of doing that thing and that thing alone, which everybody agrees with, she's like, working under the boot of greed. And it's like, well, when did this become a class struggle? This is a struggle session now because you work hard?
And that's the thing. So I picked up on that. And I also agree with what Holmes said of how emblematic that AOC is of the party, because she's a fraud, right?
Yeah.
This is someone who grew up in one of the most expensive parts of New York, right? Saying that, oh, we're going to fight back against the boot of greed, because she's just paying lip service to that stupid socialist foot soldiers that they need out there to be a threat. That, hey, listen, if you don't vote our way, there's a reason that businesses get boarded up on election day. You know, she's completely been absorbed by the party establishment in her short time of getting elected, winning that primary. She's now been brought in to, okay, you can give a convention speech, and she's mad that she gets chased down by these Gaza protesters when she's trying to watch a movie at the theater. She's like, I'm watching a movie at the theater. Can't you save your genocide talk for some other time?
Yeah.
She's no longer some kind of like
Sandy
a grassroots
from
fighter.
Westchester. That's
Exactly.
AOC is Sandy from Westchester. Now she's suddenly like Latino. Speaking from the Bronx. Like, you're so
That entire
fake.
party is a fraud. And like when they talk about how they're going to help working people, they're the ones who have put the boots on the working class's neck with the way inflation has gone up over the 4 years. It's a huge fraud.
Is that like a Rosie Perez sort of thing you're doing there?
Yeah, from White Men Can't Jump.
White Men Can't Jump.
I mean,
you sort of
like
sounded
that is
there.
what I hear her doing. I am imitating
That is
her
really
imitating
good.
a Spanish person.
Oh, yeah. That's really
So
good.
that's my Spanish imitation of her Spanish. And by the way, speaking of which, now they've been doing like the parade of celebrities there. And is it tonight that Ana Navarro is their celebrity? Oh my God. Oh my gosh.
She got to the celebrity now somehow.
I'm sorry, but that's like the kind of celebrity you'd find at a Republican National Convention where they can't find any.
Burn.
I don't know. We had Megyn Kelly walking around the Republican National Committee. That's a pretty big celebrity.
So wait, you raise a very good point about the class warfare. All right. So, and they're all fakers, right? So Sandy from Westchester is Nazam Latino from the Bronx. And also her being like Kamala Harris, she understands the middle class because she is from the middle class. So Kamala Harris's dad was a professor at Stanford. Her mom had a PhD from Berkeley. So she may have grown up in a duplex because the mom wasn't rich and they got a divorce young, but that doesn't make her some sort of middle class champion. She's been making hundreds of thousands of dollars on the taxpayer dime ever since she got out of school. So I hate the rewrite. Like, she's actually not some poor, pull herself up by the bootstraps. It's like, you know how many actual working class people would love to have had parents who double PhDs, a respected, PhD scientist and professor at Stanford, and she still gets to run around and say like, I'm just like you. Okay, so they're fake. And then you get this attack on somebody who actually is not middle class, working class. I mean, he was poor. His family was poor. His mama did a little better. But his mom was a drug addict, J.D. Vance I'm speaking of, who really couldn't hold down a job. He had no father whatsoever in the picture. And yet he pulled himself up. He pulled himself up by going to the military, doing his service honorably, and then coming back and crushing it at Ohio State. And then he parlayed that into Yale Law School. And here are the Democrats. I'll give you Ohio Representative Beatty speaking about the J.D. Vance story.
Left. Now, J.D. Vance likes to talk about how he's from Ohio. But as soon as he could, he ran away to Yale and Silicon Valley, cozying up with billionaires while trashing our communities.
Unbelievable.
Lives in Cincinnati.
Would leave Ohio
Joyce.
to go to Yale. What?
It is very very funny for Joyce Beatty, of all people, to be calling J.D. Vance some sort of elitist when she was appointed to her husband's state rep seat in Ohio. She's been a professional politician for 40 years. Yeah, that's exactly right. When J.D. Vance was deploying to Iraq and then comes back, goes to Ohio State and parlays that into Yale, she had her entire career handed to her by her husband. So it's absolutely incredible for her, of all people, to call him the elitist.
And that's the thing is the absolute hypocrisy and just moral bankruptcy of these people that's being put on display when you have Kamala Harris being like, you know, she brought herself up as a champion of the middle class from nothing. Yeah. Every job she's ever had, she was appointed to. And every single one of those jobs was a government job being paid for by taxpayers. I don't think people realize this. Mm-hmm. When you look at who's on the ticket, you've got Tim Walz, who's been on a government job his entire lifetime. Kamala Harris, who has never worked in the private sector either. And then you've got J.D. Vance and Donald Trump. Like, how are you going to say that, you know what, I'm going to help you hardworking folks out there when you've never had to have a real job? You know you're not going to lose a government job.
Well, and I never heard this complaint about, I don't know, Barack Obama leaving Chicago community organizing to go to Harvard.
He left him behind.
Was he leaving Chicago behind?
Yeah. And his posing up with billionaires is okay.
Like I met J.D. Vance in 2017 when he was, I guess 34, and he had gone to law school, and he might have even been younger, whatever that was. Well, let's do the math. Now it's 24, so 7 years ago. So he was 33. He had gone to Yale Law. He had done the Ohio State into Yale Law School, and then he went out to Silicon Valley for, I think, 5 years. Made some money, decided it wasn't for him. He told me personally he couldn't handle San Francisco. People were defecating on the street. He was like, I'm out of here. And so he left all that money. He left a very well-paying job with Peter Thiel and came back home to Ohio and was starting a foundation for his fellow Ohioans, trying to help them improve their lives. That's what he was doing when I found him in 2017. It would take a few more years before he would even run for office. So to the contrary, he left a high-paying job to come home to Ohio to figure out what he could do for them. And ultimately, he ran for office there to try to do that for them. But this is not a one-off from this Representative Beatty. Tim Walz, what a jerk, has said the same thing. Listen to him.
They're running for He-Man Women Haters Club or something. That angst that J.D. Vance talks about in Hillbilly Elegy, none of my hillbilly cousins went to Yale, and none of them went on to be venture capitalists or whatever. It's not who people really are.
Well, maybe they were dumb. I don't know anything about his hillbilly relatives. How are we supposed to make a judgment based on that?
How are we supposed to know he actually has hillbilly relatives? I mean, this guy has told lies about absolutely everything under the sun. Newest this morning in the New York Times, apparently he said that he and his wife had IVF, and that wasn't true. Did you see this? Yeah.
No, many times.
In addition to him saying that he was Newt Rockney and led the team to the national championship, and he was actually just a defensive coordinator, and then he was
volunteer.
In battle. Like, just tell the truth, just say I was one of the coaches on the team. My wife and I did that. Like, why do they have to exaggerate on absolutely everything? The guy,
they made him into Craig T. Nelson in that TV series, like, or Coach T in Friday Night Lights. Yeah. No, he's like an assistant volunteer, expendable coach on the team. And the IVF thing, it really is amazing. Tomorrow we're having on Liz Collin of Alpha News, who's been doing great reporting on Tim Walz for a long time, But yes, that's one of the stories we're going to get into, because we have tape of him on camera saying, we conceived our children through IVF, which J.D. Vance wants to ban. J.D. Vance doesn't want to ban IVF. That's a lie. But his wife, Gwen, came out and admitted that they conceived their children through intrauterine insemination, which is not IVF. It's basically where they insert the man's semen directly into you with like a turkey baster. It's not where a child is conceived, in a petri dish outside of either parent. And now that's the latter, and I use the latter so I can speak to this. It's more controversial because then what do you do with the excess embryos, right? Like that's why people find IVF controversial. There's no such problem with intrauterine insemination. It's just a different means of delivering the sperm versus the one we all normally use. Anyway,
This is not on my bingo card.
Yeah. Megyn saying turkey baster.
I'm just gonna get under the desk and let you all figure this out for a while.
It got too graphic. I'm sorry. I didn't mean for it to. Anyway, he lied. It's another.
Yeah.
It's just another lie. He didn't use IVF. It's the guy. Every day there's a new lie from him.
Yeah.
And I understand he was introduced with, again, the wrong title yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
When he was speaking at the convention.
Yes. We have it. We have that. Listen to this, Smug. Here he is. We don't have it. We don't have it, but we'll have it. But they know he shouldn't be called Command Sergeant Major. He never actually earned it. It was a temporary title that he didn't train for. Go ahead, Smug.
And that's why I feel fact checks aren't effective, is because we already know that they have complete control over the media.
Yeah.
And that the media they have say, the truth is important. Democracy dies in darkness. And they will, like, it was hilarious that C-SPAN even put across the top, we are not, we are not live checking these statements because it's a Democrat convention. Don't you know this, you people? Like, at the same time, the Democrats are allowed to run roughshod, say whatever lies they want, which is why I think the focal point needs to not be on trying to fight facts with facts and just focus on fighting fire with fire. The American people are in a position where they are fed up with the way things are going. And if we're not careful, the Democrats are going to try to steal that this is a change election from under us, because the vast majority of the public wants a new direction from the horrible way things have been going for these past few years. And Kamala Harris is trying to run away from her part in making that happen. And instead of worrying about like, well, you know what, this is a lie, just hammer that message down.
Yeah.
But like, you've seen what these people are capable of. They're liars and they're horrible people. This is what we can do different, and this is what we have done differently.
I think that's really well said, Smug. You know, one of the things I find so fascinating about Democratic National Conventions and things like that is you get a window into the information silo that makes up the liberal part of this country, and it's a wild place. I mean, it is almost everything that came out of anyone's mouth for, God, what felt like 24 hours last night was just made up, right? I mean, it's just not at all what's happening in this country. And to your point that you just made, I mean, they want to act as though what's happening here at this convention is somehow divorced from the reality of a Biden administration in which she was the number 2, and everything's going shitty. And they just want to pretend like, I mean, there were comments about like, well, Trump's lying to you about the border. They basically did the border secure thing again. You know, and they're talking about the economy. They're talking about all these things. Like, none of it is true. You expect a little hyperbole in a political convention, but there also has to be just a touch of undergirding fact.
Well, if you didn't know any better, you would think Donald Trump's the current president.
Yeah.
That's the sort of election they're trying to run right now. And I mean, to Smug's point, we can't lose the fact that this election needs to be a referendum on the last 4 years of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. We cannot have this be a choice election where she's allowed to reinvent herself and pretend like she didn't have all those crazy positions in 2019.
You've got Kamala Harris, who's done nothing but fail upward. You know, she has been elected to office, but only in blue areas, California, first DA, then Attorney General, then as California Senator. And then she got elevated to the vice presidency because he promised James Clyburn he'd find a black woman. And so she got elevated there. And she is not the only one who we saw on the stage last night who is an obvious DEI hire. That leads me to Kathy Hochul, who's another absolute moron. She is sadly the governor of the state that I spent 50 years of my life in. And she got there because Andrew Cuomo imploded and she was the lieutenant governor. And amazingly, they reelected her. I mean, they reelected her. And I think, you know, watching her last night, it's because of just her soaring rhetoric, her ability to turn a phrase and just provide huge doses of inspo without much effort, like this one. Watch.
New York's motto is Excelsior, ever upward.
Oh,
and
my God.
Trump takes us ever downward.
It's just...
That's how you know you completely disrespect your voter base and just hold them in absolute contempt. Is that like, Trump bad? Everyone claps. Yes. I can understand that.
Charisma of roadkill.
Yeah.
You know?
My head hurts.
Horrible.
And she's not even the worst. Like, she was lieutenant governor. Look at the lieutenant governor in Minnesota. She's given Hochul a run for her money. This one's named Peggy Flanagan.
My name in the Ojibwe language is Gigi Wewadam Ukwe, or in English, speaks with a clear and loud voice, woman. I'm a member of the White Earth Nation, and my family is the Wolf Clan. And the role of our clan is to ensure that we never leave anyone behind. That's why I am supporting Kamala Harris and Tim Walz to be the next president and vice president of the United States. I've worked side by side with Governor Walz. I've seen how hard he's worked for Minnesota to be the best place for kids to grow up. He does it all with a big heart, a buffalo plaid jacket, and a bottomless bag of snacks. Nutter Butters, cheese curds, and Diet Dew.
Your tribe doesn't leave anybody behind unless you're an 82-year-old incumbent president of the United States, in which case, very much behind.
Well, I really appreciate that breakdown of, her Native American family's history from Peggy Flanagan.
Yeah. Flanagan. You got to feel for those tribes. She probably came in. They're like, oh, liberal lady, you're so loud. We will just give you a name. We will give you a name if you'll go away. Please go away.
Liberal lady,
you can have a
so
fancy
loud.
name. Take your Chardonnay and move off the reservation, Peggy.
Just look at the lineup of Democrat speakers. It's all their elite bureaucrats.
Yes.
The contrast between what Democrats are putting forward in prime time and what Republicans put forward, which was Gold Star mothers and small business owners and family members of Hamas hostages.
Yeah.
There were regular, real people in prime time for Republicans. I think it shows you a huge contrast in the values of each party in this election.
Also, I think you touched on something really important that I've been thinking about ever since, Megyn, you mentioned that, like, who is president right now? And I think the Democrats have this country exactly where they've always wanted it, is that it doesn't matter who's in leadership or who's, quote, calling the shots. They've created these layers and layers of bureaucracy to just keep their machine rolling. They can even have a change in presidency. Like, Trump came in as president, and there were still layers and layers of this bureaucracy that can keep the work going, that can keep the money flowing to their various pet projects, that they can spend $50 billion to build 7 charge stations, that they can spend $40 billion and not get a single wireless internet station in the ground. This is what they're after, is the machine to dole out to keep this game going.
And they want to protect it. The lizard lady with the bad clothes that Megyn was talking about. One of the things she said, I don't know if you guys caught this, but she was like, Donald Trump might fire federal employees.
Yeah. She was horrified. How soon can we get him in there? Yeah. I will tell you, okay, this is my one other nice moment of the night. I'm going to say something nice. You know who actually I wound up liking? I like our politics are different. She hates Trump, but I liked this woman, Jasmine Crockett. I actually, I've only seen her being kind of a shit stirrer on Capitol Hill, and that's fine. That's what they kind of do. But she told a nice story about Kamala. I was like, this is what they should be doing. Get up there, try to rehabilitate this woman who we know is a bully. We know this from the Washington Post and other mainstream media outlets that have been reporting on it when she was not yet the nominee. She was still just the lowly vice president, so they felt fine taking shots at her. But we need stories like that, right? If her party needs that, if they want her to get elected. So Jasmine Crockett got up there, and at first I was like, how did this nobody get a speaking role at the convention? And then I was like, you know what? She's winning me over because she told a nice story. She talked about how she was a public defender, and so she knows a good prosecutor when she sees her. That was good. She laid the foundation. 20 years she'd been doing that before she ran for Congress. And then she told this story.
When I visited the vice president's residence for the first time, as I approached Vice President Harris for our official photo, she turned to me and asked, "What's wrong?" Mind you, we'd never met, but she saw right through me. She saw the distress. I immediately began crying.
Just checking out.
And the most powerful woman in the world wiped my tears and listened.
That was sweet. I like that.
Nice story.
Good story.
Right? It was good. And I was like, just
Yeah,
warming
I'm
up
just
to
so
her.
cynical, though. I'm just so cynical
stand by.
about this stuff. Okay.
Stand by. I was just warming up to her. And then she said this.
The question before us is, will a vindictive, vile villain violate voters' vision for a better America or not? I hear alliterations are back in style.
Oh, okay.
I'll give her
Go
this.
ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead,
she's got personality, right?
Yeah.
Which is more than
She
you
does.
see out of most Democrats.
I don't really care for the wedding singer attire.
Yeah, well,
You know?
that's not my.
was
Yeah,
a
that I
lot.
wouldn't
It
have
was a lot of
chosen.
I
bling.
wouldn't. It's a lot.
It's a lot. But I mean, look, I'm so cynical about this. If you're looking from Kamala Harris's point of view, what do they have? Like a 5-seat majority in the House? That lady takes a walk. They're going to be real down. Like Republicans are going to be able to pass things. I mean, she was first elected in 22 with a very slim Republican majority. She's losing a Democratic vote. They were in the midst of a speaker fight, if you remember, where they still held out hopes that Hakeem Jeffries would actually be speaker because Republicans were self-immolating at that point. Like the idea that she's just sort of like personally drawn towards a stranger, I think is belied by the rest of her career.
So you are suggesting, Josh Holmes, that Kamala Harris's wiping of the tears was instant. It was like, shore up, get in there and vote our way.
That's exactly what I'm suggesting. I haven't known an authentic emotion from an elected Democrat in some 20 years of doing this, right? I mean, it's just, it's all so bad.
Yeah.
And the Dr. Seuss routine isn't bad. She's got a good personality. She's very entertaining. That's the thing. Like, I kind of don't mind. I expect them to just lie with impunity, and that's what we got. But at least if you're going to lie to me, make it entertaining. She made it entertaining.
So what you're
2 points.
saying, I'm interested in your guys' take on that. What you're saying is that Kamala Harris in that moment was another version of the weirdly smiling Nancy Pelosi. We love Joe. Another version.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, look, Nancy Pelosi is a perfect embodiment. She's been at the top, so she's had more scrutiny, and so you can see into how she operates more clearly. But it's not unique and distinct to Nancy Pelosi. It's unique and distinct to the Democratic Party, to the point where if you had any questions about that, look what they did to the incumbent president of the United States 8 weeks ago, right? They don't give a shit about anything other than holding on to power, whatever vestige of power that they have, trying to drag this country as far left as they could possibly do it. They've caught the bus on a number of occasions, and the only thing they can do is reinvent a further left place to take us.
Yeah, you're exactly right. When Chuck Schumer went for that private meeting with Joe Biden, it wasn't about how do we get your face on Mount Rushmore before this election. You know what I mean?
That Ruthless
you
broke.
make a great point.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
Thank you for broke the news.
Thank you, Meg.
Yeah.
One of the few
that was
who
big.
credited us with that.
That was the beginning of the end. Yeah. So, I mean, I just couldn't believe, like, Nancy Pelosi, she was up there. Do we have that soundbite of her on CNN talking about how, it wasn't about him. It was about his party. But she admits, like, she's now admitting she did it. Here she is.
And I know that it was very difficult for him. That's been made very clear by some of his top aides like Anita Dunn and Ron Klain. And there does seem to be, even though Anita Dunn said earlier today, quote, nobody wants to have a fight with Nancy Pelosi at this time, unquote, it does seem like there's some residual bad blood or resentment. And I'm wondering if you've spoken to him and what your response is to that.
Sometimes you just have to take a punch for the children.
And that's what you're doing right now? You're just going to take the punch for the children? How do you talk to him is my only question.
What I have to do.
Right.
He made the decision for the country. My concern was not about the president. It was about his campaign.
Nobody is questioning the fact that the Democratic Party seems much better positioned right now than it did 4 weeks and 2 days ago. There's no question about that. Former Speaker Pelosi.
So why are we even talking about it?
And then he said the network made a mask.
That's exactly what Holmes said, because it's only in service of the mission of holding on to power. She's like, so why even talk about it?
Yeah.
Why are we talking about anything?
Yeah.
But
questioning my methods.
That's the thing is, and she's not admitting she did it. It's like a threat. Like people who think she's still not calling the shots. You think Hakeem Jeffries is calling the shots?
Yeah.
She's like, I just killed a president in front of everybody.
Yeah, why are we discussing if it was fair or honest or just?
Yeah.
You know, to the voters, they don't matter.
No.
All that matters is that Kamala's poll numbers went up.
Yeah.
It was truly like a you need me on that wall kind of moment.
Yeah.
Yes, Colonel Jessup.
I do kind of respect it, and I respected that she's brazen enough to say she did it for the children.
Yeah, I know.
Just sort of out of left field.
But also, that's a wild thing to say. Sometimes you got to take a punch for the children. This sounds like a horrible situation.
No, who's trying to punch children?
Democrat. and all the way through the 9th month.
All right. Stand by. We have much more to get to, including what appeared to be a reference to sexual gratification by the CNN panel as they watched events unfold last night. Stand by. Ruthless stays with us. Do you owe back taxes or have unfiled tax returns? Well, along with hiring tens of thousands of new agents and field officers, the IRS spent the first half of this year by sending over 5 million pay-up letters to those who have unfiled tax returns or balances owed. Don't waive your rights if they call you, and speak with them on your own. Tax Network USA, a trusted tax relief firm, has saved over $1 billion in back taxes for their clients, and they can help you secure the best deal possible. Whether you owe $10,000 or $10 million, they can help you. Whether it's business or personal taxes, even if you have the means to pay, or if you're on a fixed income, they can help. Finally, resolve your tax burdens once and for all. Call them at 1-800-245-6000 or visit tnusa.com/Megyn. Don't let the IRS control your life. Empower yourself with Tax Network USA's support and take charge of your financial future. Don't sit there stressed out. There are solutions. Visit tnusa.com/Megyn today. So continuing with our theme of how fake what we saw last night was, I give you now Jill Biden, SOT 10.
Weeks ago, when I saw him dig deep into his soul and decide to no longer seek re-election and endorse Kamala Harris.
He dug deep, guys. That's how it went down. Soul searched.
Also, whenever they made that, transition from either when it was Joe speaking and even when Jill was speaking over to Kamala, didn't she seem small? Even among the Nancy Pelosi's and even the Maxine Waters, it just comes off as Kamala's just not even close in terms of the same level as these folks who've had experience, won elections. It's when they go back to her, it just kept, at least to me, it was a shock of this is really their presidential nominee.
Yeah, they were walking this line between passing the torch, although that's bullshit in and of itself. It had to be ripped from his hands. He didn't want to pass the torch. I mean, he did 2 months of insisting that he could still do the job and that the polling said that he would win. But it got to the point that it was sort of patronizing of Kamala, you know? The best decision I made in my whole political career was this thing I telegraphed on day one that I'd nominate a black woman as vice president. It just happened to be this woman. That was my best decision my entire political career. I mean, come on.
I mean, he's had a lot of really bad decisions.
To your point earlier about where are the real people, with their real stories, what I saw of that last night was the 3 women who have had abortions, who got up there to talk about abortion. And I have nothing but empathy for the 3rd woman who talked about how she was raped by her stepfather. Her name is Hadley Duval. But where she took that horrific experience in the conclusion, what her takeaway was on it politically, was just dead wrong. I mean, it was really wrong. Here's what she said.
I can't imagine not having a choice. But today, that's the reality for many women and girls across the country because of Donald Trump's abortion bans. He calls it a beautiful thing. What is so beautiful about a child having to carry her parents' child?
You don't have to look very far to hear Donald Trump's actual position on abortion, and in particular, rape and incest exceptions. Listen.
Yeah.
Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also.
Now, guys, that was not ancient history. That was at the June debate with Joe Biden. Where are the 10,000 fact checks of the misinformation that was given out from the DNC floor last night on an important piece of this contest? People have been debating abortion at every debate, at every appearance. Where does Trump stand? He's made perfectly clear he's taken shit from the right for saying what he said there. And yet I'll wait for PolitiFact and the others to fact check, yes, a sympathetic person who got up there and said very false things about Trump's position.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's the worst kind of lie because it's wrapped up in a horrific, highly emotional story that you can immediately sort of sympathize with and identify with of a horrible choice that this young woman had to make. But even in the setup to ultimately the big lie that she had there, she's calling it Donald Trump's abortion ban. Like, look, I understand that a convention is not the place for nuance or that kind of thing. But I mean, we're talking about a Supreme Court decision that was decided and threw these things back to a bunch of states of whom you elect your representatives and then they make the policy. The idea that Donald Trump is somehow presiding over abortion bans is entirely ridiculous, even before you get to the point where his stated position since the time he came down the golden escalator was exceptions for rape, incest, or life of and health of the mother.
But there are no fact checks because the media is on their side. I mean, we say it over and over and over again, but it's true. Like we talked about this Tim Walz IVF thing. In the New York Times story about the Tim Walz IVF lie, they write, people assumed that Tim Walz had a baby through IVF. They didn't write like why they assumed it. Tim Walz told people he had a baby through IVF. They had a baby through IVF. They don't fact check them like in the coach thing. Politico wrote a profile with artwork with like X's and O's and plays, making him look like he was Eddie Robinson.
The coaching really riles up Ashbrook. He just like the little lies he tells over and over again that are like boosted by the media rather than like checked and beat down.
And I think there's a reason
it's more
for that.
stolen valor.
It's like Duncan said, they're trying to run against Donald Trump and not the horrors of living under the Biden-Harris administration. So when they say that it's a Trump ban, they want you to think that, wow, these past 4 years have sucked. I guess it must have been because of Trump somehow. And they have to lie about it because are they going to be able to have a convention where they're like, let's celebrate the price of groceries going up 50%. You're not getting rounds of applause with that. Kamala herself is trying to act like she wasn't a part of that, saying that like groceries have gone up by 50%. Well, what are you going to do about it when you were already there causing it? You know?
Well, by the way, she's saying she's going to use the FTC to write these very wrong grocery prices. You control them right now. Like you're in the office. That's actually something. If that's your solution, why don't you just go get that done? But she doesn't, and she's banking on people not knowing any of that. One of the most outrageous moments last night. Truly one of the most. I mean, because they're joyful. They're the party of uplift. And on the eve of Bill Clinton coming to the stage, right? Because he comes not tonight, but tomorrow. So I guess 2 eves away. They have the nerve to run like an ad about Law and Order. I referenced it in the intro. And they borrow a little bit from the Dick Wolf show. And here is a bit of what they played.
In the criminal justice system, the people are represented by 2 separate yet equally important groups. The police who investigate crime, and the district attorneys who prosecute the offenders. This is the story of Donald Trump. His entire life, Trump has believed he's above the law, that no one would ever dare hold him accountable. He lies, he rips off workers, He sexually abuses women.
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
He cheats in business. He cheated on his wife with a porn star and paid her off so the American people wouldn't find out during an election. But in the criminal justice system, ordinary Americans have had the courage to find him accountable time and time again.
Guilty.
Guilty.
Guilty. Donald Trump guilty on all 34 felony counts.
For the first time in history, we have a convicted felon running for president. And to take on this case, we need a president who has spent her life prosecuting perpetrators like Donald Trump.
Okay.
I
don't know where to begin, but let's just start with cheated on his wife. Her husband, Kamala Harris's own husband, the man who she wants us to make first gentleman, cheated on his first wife with the nanny, which honestly is worse than with a porn star. With the nanny whom he impregnated. He did not deny this report when it was brought to him. Nobody knows what happened to the baby. Was the baby aborted? Is there a love child that Doug Emhoff has with this woman? We don't know because the media won't follow up on this. I didn't see that in her video last night. Not to mention the Bill Clinton problems. Donald Trump is a predator. Bill Clinton's predatory behavior puts every politician's to shame. He's the OG sexual predator. And he'll be taking the stage on Wednesday night with her blessing. She'll be sitting in the audience applauding the man who was accused of raping Juanita Broderick, of sexually assaulting Kathleen Willey and Paula Jones, and I could keep going. But you see, we're supposed to memory hole all of that because he's Bill Clinton.
Yeah, it's sadistic. Also, the whole premise of her being tough on crime is just a laughable proposition. I saw an ad, I think it was MAGA Inc. or something, that had a relative of somebody who was killed by a recidivist that she let out of prison in California. We all remember, obviously, the bail fund in Minneapolis that let a whole bunch of criminals out of jail after trashing the city of Minneapolis, and the rate of recidivism and violent crime amongst a few of them was astronomical, unthinkable with somebody who tries to fashion themselves as tough on crime. They just don't have, and the reason that they switched to the Trump thing, and we said this from the very beginning of why they wanted Donald Trump, is because their whole game plan before they knew that they had to trash Joe Biden was if they could convict him in a court of law and just put a ceiling on his vote at like 48% in the states that matter, with the rhetoric that this is a convicted felon over and over and over again, they would never actually have to talk about what it is that they've done to this country. And now that they've gone through this 6-week period of their own struggles, but threw Joe Biden overboard, they're back to the game plan. And that little video, I think, is the best representation of the original strategy the Democrats were taking into 2024 that was on hiatus over the summer, but they're now back in action and they think they've got a winner with it.
Well, it does absolutely nothing to convince a single persuadable voter in this country. Like, that's catnip for the base and the people who are sitting there at that Democratic convention. But if you listen to what actual persuadable voters or these double haters want to hear. They want to hear from Kamala what she actually plans to do. They want to hear policy positions and a vision for the future of the country. This whole idea of her being a prosecutor who's going to take it to Donald Trump does not motivate a single one of those people to vote for her.
Well, it's belied by the facts that she was never tough on crime.
And it also, yeah. I mean, people they have such cynicism and such a low regard for the media and politicians at this point, back to from Russiagate to COVID, we got to mask toddlers, but if you're going to burn down cities with BLM, you don't have to wear a mask, stuff like that. Like, people are just so cynical to the point where, like, they don't care. Mm-hmm. They do not care that Donald Trump was convicted of these felonies in New York. They see right through that thing. So you're going to have to give them more than this contrived notion you're the tough on crime prosecutor.
Yeah.
But
it makes you wonder.
Can I tell you, like, some of the stuff they're saying about him, he could actually sue for. It's impossible to sue as a public figure for defamation. But some of the stuff, including the lie about there are fine people on both sides. I mean, honestly, that is so untrue. It's been proven untrue. Just roll the tape of what he actually said. You actually could recover in a court of law potentially for something like that. And that wasn't it. I mean, of course, the whole night was spent Trump bashing. Somebody did a rundown where it was like the number of, I might have screen grabbed it. This is how I prepare for the show. I see interesting things and I screen grab them and come back to them. But in any event, it was something like the number of references of illegal immigration and the number of references of healthcare and so on. And they were just down to like the tiny numbers. Here it is: border 8 times, crime 6 times, inflation 3 times, Trump 147 times.
Yeah. That's the game plan. That's the game plan. They just
amazing.
don't, they always
Courtesy of
thought that
Tim
they could
Murtaugh.
prosecute this case against Donald Trump by never talking about themselves. And they are back on track on that for what they think. And the media is certainly not going to hold them accountable. But I think Duncan's probably right in that when we get into the thrust of this in a post-Labor Day environment, and you continue to have bad economic news, nothing is particularly optimistic and good about the tenure of this administration. People are going to want some answers at some level. You know, it's not just going to be an emotional, well, this person's different than the last
We'll see.
person type choice. But it does get them very, very close. And I think Republicans would be making a grave mistake if they think that there isn't some persuasion power here in at least reconsolidating a Democratic base. Because I think one of the things I was going to say is it's becoming clear that Democrats view this as a base turnout election. They do not think that they have the power of persuasion on their side. And they're right about that.
Yep.
So the question is whether or not, and that's why they ultimately kicked Joe Biden off this ticket, because he had a Hamas problem and she doesn't, and an elderly problem and she doesn't. It had nothing to do with the policies that are different, because there is no difference, right? It's just the presentation. And if you can reconsolidate that Democratic base to try to turn out in numbers of people who just hate Donald Trump, that's the only qualification for this group.
So they
just
did pour
hate
fuel.
Donald Trump.
They poured fuel onto that fire multiple times last night. I played that one ad, and Dark Brandon returned. And here's Raphael Warnock, one of their rising stars, senator from the state of Georgia, U.S. senator, weighing in. Watch.
America, make no mistake, Donald Trump is a plague on the American conscience. He is a clear and present threat.
Okay. It was 2 days ago, 3 days at most, that I watched a CNN panel melt down because one of the panelists, Nancy Mace, mispronounced Kamala. Watch.
When you disrespect Kamala Harris by saying you will call her whatever you want, I know you don't intend it to be that way. That's the history and legacy of white disregard for the humanity of black people.
Oh, so now you're calling me racist.
I didn't say. I just said you were
racist.
racist.
Come on.
You don't have to intend racism to.
No. You are.
Get your name
and
right.
Kamala Harris. If
Kamala.
I were a man,
You said this. We don't call you Nancy Manchin. It's Kamala. You're doing this on purpose, Congresswoman. That's disrespectful.
Just a second.
They don't like the disrespect, guys. It's not okay to
unbelievable.
disrespect.
The funniest thing is they all learned how to pronounce her name a month ago. You know, and first of all, her name is Sanskrit. Kamala is a Sanskrit name, you know, and they're trying to make it this attack on a black woman. Sorry, it's just sort of hard to pronounce. Like nobody's doing it on purpose. We're all trying our best.
Even if she was doing it on purpose, who cares? You're calling him a sexual predator. You've got Raphael Warnock saying he's a clear and present threat, that he's a plague. You've got Joe Biden, who just spoke out a couple days ago calling him Donald Dump. F you and your phony indignation over calling her Kamala instead of Kamala. This is so fake.
Who'd have guessed that Mace would have had a tough shake on that panel? Huh? Well, you got to question the booking. That did not seem like it was going to go well from the jump.
And again, it was what they gave 48 hours after one of their folks tried to kill Donald Trump to being back to like, he is a clear and present threat to America, folks.
Great points.
Hitler.
Yeah.
Hitler.
Yeah.
Right? Like, we're back to Hitler. By the way, how about the fact that thing's been completely erased out of the memory? It's out of the news. Like, didn't happen. The assassination attempt on Trump, it's truly as if it was a nothing in the news cycle. When the media, it's like the line from Mommy Dearest, if she doesn't like you, she can make you disappear. That's what happened.
It is. Sad state of affairs we have ourselves in here.
Well, there's a reason for that, right? I mean, it's like he looked heroic, he looked sympathetic. It would require them to tone down their rhetoric, and they're not okay with any one of those messages, any one of those things. Meantime, you've got Trump, who he says this, and the media freaks out like, oh my God, he won't change. He's terrible. And I'm listening to him, having heard all this other stuff, thinking, yes, I totally understand. Listen to SOT 31. This is Trump.
All I want to do is have strong borders and good education. We want to have choice for education. So important. So many different things. You would think it would be the other way. We rebuilt the military. We did so many great things. People don't know who she is. As far as the personal attacks, I'm very angry at her that she'd weaponized the justice system against me and other people. Very angry at her. I think I'm entitled to personal attacks.
Where's he wrong?
He's not wrong.
And that's the thing is when you'd mentioned that it's actionable legally, the things that have been said about him that, these lies that defame him, like find people on both sides kind of thing. The one problem is good luck finding a fair court for Donald Trump. I mean, that is the issue. The reason that in New York City, you can find these trumped up charges, turn them into felonies where the feds wouldn't want to go after them because there was no merit to it. But they can make a person guilty of 40 felonies because politically they don't like him. Good luck finding a court that's going to let you do what is legal.
Yeah.
He might be getting sentenced to jail, you guys, in a matter of weeks. September 18th is the sentencing day in front of Judge Merchan. Andy McCarthy is convinced he's going to get sentenced to jail with a suspended sentence, meaning he won't have to go right off to jail. He'll be given the chance to appeal. But the lawfare is not done. And this is like the crowning moment, right? Like this is what they came for. Like get a convicted felon who has been sentenced to jail. How are you going to elect him to the presidency? But if you fucking say Kamala instead of Kamala or whatever it is, you're disgusting.
Maybe it's a silver lining. Donald Trump's poll numbers were at their best when he was on trial in New York.
I think if they take the brazen step of trying to sentence him to prison of any kind, they're going to be sorely, sorely mistaken on what the ramifications are of that. I think they're going to be the kind of stuff that we saw back in April when he was convicted in the first place, and all of a sudden there's a 3-4 point jump in his ballot question.
Well, Holmes, can you explain that? Can you explain that? Because I think the base for sure will be more animated than ever. Well, maybe not than ever, because I mean, after the assassination attempt, but the numbers, how could they get higher?
It wasn't just.
But what about those independents? How would that motivate the independence he needs?
Yeah, I mean, what we saw in the spring was it went well beyond the base. In fact, there's never really been a base problem for Donald Trump. He's always had a codlock on that. What we saw happen in April is constituencies that have been harder for him to reach, sort of in the center left, center right of the electorate, predominantly women, thought this guy was getting railroaded. And they couldn't believe that in this country you had a political opponent, which was going to be the Republican nominee for president of the United States, being prosecuted not only by the administration that was an incumbent, but also states that ran entirely on a platform of putting this guy in jail. I mean, that is the antithesis of what this country was actually founded on. And when it was right in the face of the American people, there was a pretty clear choice. He was running dead even with women. He was ahead with independents. Now, we've seen all of that recede over the summer and all the events and chaos that we've had from a debate and assassination attempt and everything else. But I think if they go back down that road in September, you could see a recreation of that environment.
I mean, because outside of the assassination attempt, which obviously was a great high watermark for Donald Trump, and his approval numbers jumped and everything, like trying to put him in prison is the only way you can make Donald Trump sympathetic to those cohorts of the electorate who otherwise don't really like the guy. Because that system, the system that would put him in prison is a system they also don't trust, right? And so they find that suddenly they're on the side of Donald Trump, a person who they would otherwise never vote for.
Totally right.
And if this really is a base motivation style election where Democrats are betting that they have to turn out their whole base, what do you think happens to our base if they try to do that to Trump on the eve of the election? I mean, every single person is going to come out to vote on our side.
Yeah, no question.
Well, I think it may happen. Andy's smart. I've all along been thinking he wouldn't get a jail term, but Andy's point is that the way they tried this case is not just a business records case. They tried it as he tried to steal an election. by paying off this woman. He had an obligation to let us hear what Stormy Daniels had to say. And his unwillingness to allow that was a theft of Hillary Clinton's rightful victory. And thus, if that's what he's been convicted of in the eyes of these prosecutors and this jury and this judge, then why wouldn't he be sentenced to jail? That's a very serious offense to actually steal an election. And so, September 18th is an important date to circle on your calendar. It's going to be a very, very big news date. And they scheduled the hearing on whether the Supreme Court's immunity decision will vitiate the need for sentencing, right? Does it save Trump? For 2 days in advance. It's either the hearing or his decision on that comes down. But the point is, and Andy was making this over on his podcast, they did that. Merchan likely did that because he knows he's not going Trump's way on it. He's going to say, some things came in that otherwise shouldn't have come in because the Supreme Court said you also can't use evidence of what a president did with his official acts in any criminal case against him. But Merchan could say, but it was immaterial. We would have reached the same judgment without that stuff. And his prediction is that's exactly what Merchan has decided to do. He'll sort of give lip service to the immunity decision and say that doesn't affect us. And 2 days later, he'll sentence Donald J. Trump to jail, but then suspend the sentence pending.
That's fascinating. It's a fascinating take, just a low point in our democracy, if that is in fact what happens. I will say, just politically, how people consume this, outside of all the great details that you laid out, I think there's a fundamental question which is easily answered by almost everybody across the ideological spectrum, which is, would these charges have been brought? Would he have been convicted if he weren't running for president? And there is nobody, no serious person anywhere in this country who thinks that they would. I mean, they had, 15 years to bring these record cases? It wasn't until he filed for re-election that they actually went out and filed them. I mean, that's why these things are more quickly consumed by the American people than Democratic politicians would lead you to believe.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's going to be a dark day. Meanwhile, it's nothing but joy on the Democrat side, and I want to get to some of the joy that they felt. I mean, when they say joy, they mean joy. They mean joy at an inappropriate level. I'll put it that way. Listen, you tell me if you sense any sort of interesting somethings in Dana Bash's language last night, talking about the Democrats taking in the moment. Kamala Harris appeared. She made some remarks. Listen to how she described their reaction.
The crowd is really excited here.
It's electric, and not to mix metaphors, but it does feel like something just got uncorked. There's just a lot of pressure, and all of a sudden everybody feels free to express their joy, and there's no question that this is a feeling that Democrats wanted to feel. They were searching for this kind of energy and this kind of enthusiasm, particularly, just in general, but particularly given the Republican that they're running against. Yeah.
I'm sorry, but
I see what you're doing here. You save these kind of things for us, don't you, Megyn?
I do.
Try to get it.
I do. I'm not giving this to Charles C.W. Cook.
Smug, what was your hot take on that?
So here's what I'm going to say.
What else can be said?
What can be said? No. I just love on the night that they were supposed to be we're sending off Joe.
Yeah.
That they're he was a cork.
Yeah.
He had everything stuck in the way. He was in the way of our joy.
We're popping champagne on his political grave.
That's just unbelievable. I do want to say something in my defense. I did raise the Jeffrey Toobin masturbatory incident with Victor Davis Hanson, so there's really no bridge I won't cross to get the story of the day.
I'm glad to see fair and balanced all the way.
Yeah. See, I love it. I respect you guys. I respect you, and I don't even have to be drunk to do it. I don't have to be drunk. I do it stone cold sober. Maybe the same cannot be said for our potential next president. Have you guys seen the memes questioning whether Kamala Harris is drunk or just a dunce? Is she drunk or dumb? Is she drunk or disorderly? I don't know. I'm of two minds on it. I've seen some clips where she's a little slurry. I can see how she's a little, and you're like, what? But some of the evidence, I was like, I don't know. we put together the montage of the clips that have been circulating as the alleged evidence that she's a boozer. And you guys, we report, you decide. Watch.
You know, we have to stay woke. Like, everybody needs to be woke. And you can talk about if you're the wokest or woker, but just stay more woke than less woke.
Yeah. There is this wonderful word that has a great meaning, and it's called hypothesis, which means that you have an idea, and then it is well accepted, it will be tested.
Has Wi-Fi and even USB outlets next to every seat. I mean, come on, imagine. You can charge your phone on your way home from work. That's good stuff. I'm pointing to the direction of what I believe is the Capitol. He's gonna speak in a minute, but there's a lot of love in this room for our president. Give us a hard time sometimes, and she would say to us, I don't know what's wrong with you young people. You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? Go round and round. Just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can. I call myself a joyful warrior. Right? Never let anyone take your joy from you.
So I can't say, you know, I'm not a doctor or whatever, I guess, or an officer on the side of the road making a walk a line on this.
Or a substance abuse counselor.
I just know when I have like 8 or 9 bourbons, I think everything I'm saying is really
profound,
smart, and funny. And like, if I were being videoed, I'm probably the only person laughing.
Yeah.
And I bet it looks a lot like that.
I don't know, man. I'm also not a doctor, but I think she's dumb. I really do. I think that's the diagnosis, is stupidity.
There's also sort of like a stoner mentality to her.
A little bit.
Like the
maybe a gummy.
That's good stuff. Like, yeah, like that's like a high schooler with munchies at the Taco Bell drive-in window at 3 a.m.
I'd be like, listen, man, there's a USB charger in your car.
Bro, it's amazing.
Bad stuff.
It's true. Like, you're gonna hear from in a minute.
Yeah.
Joe Biden. Okay, so it's an ongoing problem. There's no way she's drunk at all these public appearances. Somebody would notice. But she
Work
does
for the
have
Kennedys.
like a wine bar named after her or something like that. I don't know, like a kind of a theme, whatever. Here she is in Pennsylvania this weekend, and this one made the rounds. People are like, what is she saying? And as you'll see in the second soundbite we'll play, it's what we call a pattern. Okay, listen to her in Pennsylvania this past weekend talking about democracy.
Our election is about understanding the importance of this beautiful country of ours in terms of what we stand for around the globe as a democracy. As a democracy, we know there's a duality to the nature of democracy. On the one hand, incredible strength when it is intact, incredibly strong, and incredibly fragile.
I just you make a good point. She can't be drunk at every single one of these things, but she can be dumb at every single one of those things. That's the control.
Reminds me of like, oh, you
she's
got
not
more?
done. Hold, she's not done. Watch. She loves this.
The nature of democracy is there are two sides to it in terms of the nature of it. There's a duality. There's a duality to the nature of democracy. When it's intact, oh, it's so strong. And it is very fragile. The nature of democracy, there's a duality to it. It has two sides to it.
Democracy, there's a duality to it. On the one hand, a democracy, when it is intact, is very strong. On the other hand, and here is the duality, democracy is also extremely fragile. It will only be as strong as the willingness of its people to fight for it.
I did.
Prosecution rests.
I love how she says, and here's the duality part.
And here's the duality, because it's the second part.
Like, you know, it's a really good rhetorical device when you have to explain it that much.
Well, she's got like in the full act, each and every one, it's like she's thinking it through on the fly.
It's a very simple concept.
It's a pretty simple concept. Yeah. It's acting.
That's
exactly
that's
right.
acting, right? That's her fakeness.
Yep. No, that's exactly right. I mean, she reminds me of like the shittiest motivational speaker that's ever addressed a junior high anywhere in this country. That and a cross between like a substitute teacher who has more degrees than a thermometer but can't hold down a job. Like the combination of those two things is, I think, where you get like the duality. Maybe mix in a Tip Top or a Chardonnay, and then you got like the full perfect.
She just like there is no wisdom there. That's the thing that's so impossible about her becoming president. You're like, there's no wisdom. There's no depth of thinking. This person's not fast on her feet. And whatever she tries to use as a stirring rhetorical device is false, empty, and didn't work on me the first 10 times you tried it.
But remember the first 3 years of Biden's administration, she was a punchline for everybody because of this. And everybody was like, oh, no, Joe Biden's not going anywhere because his insurance policy is his vice president. Nobody thinks his vice president can actually do that job. I mean, that's what everybody talked about before she got the nod to be their nominee. Totally. And now all of a sudden, everybody has to be one of her yes men staffers. The entire press has to be her yes person staffer who listens to that bullshit over and over again and is like, oh, yeah, Kamala, that sounds so smart. You killed it, boss. You know what I mean?
Everything that was once absurd that they laughed at is now treated as profound.
Right. Yeah. And the few staffers that are left, because she ran through about 10 dozen of them in the first year and a half.
There were multiple stories written about that specific thing.
Yeah, that she just couldn't hold. Like nobody wanted to work for her. She was insane. She had these like circular logic reasoning machines and kept getting pissed off that she was put in a position of having to defend the indefensible and all these things like that nobody liked to work for. And they're trying to make this lady president of the United States. What a scary proposition.
Yeah, right. It's why Charlie Spearing had his book.
Yeah, Charlie Spearing, he's been great. Wait, can I say this? They now we've learned over the past week that Lester Holt interview she gave was really jarring for her. She was shaken up by how poorly she did, where she's like, we've been to the border. And he, to his credit, is like, you've never been to the border. And I've never been to Europe. What's your point? And it was disastrous. And she got criticized roundly for it. And apparently, according to the reporting, she went underground after that. She was very shaken by how poorly she did and the reaction to her, and became obsessed with not repeating that mistake, not giving interviews, was worried about what Fox News might be saying about her, got like just very like, oh, you know, my career requires me to be quiet. And she was relatively quiet after that point. You know, we saw her doing a couple things that probably seemed like they'd be harmless, like going to the Space Museum, and then they weren't because she got dumb and said weird things. But now they've learned their lesson, right? She's out there and she understands she cannot do it. And they understand that too. Everyone's running cover. And the few times she's spoken out, like that duality remark was the other day, you get a glimpse into the real her, like not the curated version we keep getting forced on us by the teleprompter. And at these, you know, events like the campaign events, and I'm sure at the convention on Thursday night, you want to talk about duality? There's your duality right there.
That's right. I mean, look, I think the one thing that you can have some confidence in is running for president, with the notable exception of 2020 when they just kept Joe Biden in the basement and blamed it on COVID, at some point you're going to have a revelation of who this person is, right? She has a confined timeline for that. Usually that plays out in a primary, in the beginnings of a general election. She's trying to do all of this in 90 days. But I think in 90 days, it is impossible to entirely keep that out because that's who she is, Megyn. She has no business running for president of the United States. She has no business being in the office that she's currently in.
Yeah. Right.
Right. And that will come out with just any exposure.
Right.
I think.
Right. Some people just aren't cut out for that line of work. And that's why she didn't make it to Iowa. She's not Obama. She thinks like, I can be Obama. I can be just like him. I can be president. Even if she becomes president, she's not Obama. She's not capable of doing what he's able to do. She just doesn't have the skill set. I mean, maybe, you know, she could be an attorney or something in California. But like President of the United States from this woman, can you imagine on an international stage, the laughingstock our country will be behind her back? These world leaders, they have text messages too.
Yeah.
They send videos to each other and laugh about it, just like everybody else. They send videos of her doing exactly what you showed your audience, and they're laughing at her. They'd be laughing at us.
Yeah,
that's right.
And we're going to get a lot more just like it if she wins. They're not going to be able to keep her behind closed doors forever. There's just too many moments as president for you to ad-lib or go off script. And that's what's going to happen if she wins. I mean, it could be fun for us media people, but not so much for the country. Stand by. The fellas from Ruthless stay with us. Interest rates have started dropping. So right now is the perfect time to consider American Financing. They're a family-owned company that's helping people create meaningful savings every month. They're salary-based mortgage consultants. Look at your full financial picture, all of your debts, and they work with you to create a loan program where they could wipe it all out and in some cases have cash left over to create emergency savings. American Financing can be a true partner in helping you and your family save money. They never charge any upfront or hidden fees, and it costs you absolutely nothing to find out how much you can save. Their average customer is saving over $800 a month, and if you start today, you may be able to delay 2 mortgage payments. Call 888-528-1219. That's 888-528-1219. AmericanFinancing.net/Kelly. As a kid, you loved eating cereal, right? But as an adult, you don't want all that sugar. And most cereals don't have the protein you want or need. But then there's Magic Spoon, a nostalgically delicious cereal that tastes just like your childhood favorites, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. And now Magic Spoon has turned their super popular cereal into high protein treats that are light, crispy, and taste just like those classic crunchy cereal bars. Magic Spoon's brand new treats are so delicious and can serve as a before or after gym snack. Magic Spoon's treats are an easy way to get 11 grams of protein, that's good, on the go. And for the first time ever, Magic Spoon treats are available in grocery stores now with delicious flavors like marshmallow and chocolatey peanut butter. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/MK. Or just look for Magic Spoon in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/MK for $5 off. Magic Spoon. Hold on to the dream.
In its decision overturning Roe v. Wade, as you heard earlier tonight, the United States Supreme Court majority wrote the following, quote, "Women are not without electoral or political power." No kidding.
Oh.
The Supreme Court took electricity away from you guys?
We don't use it. This whole studio is run by candle.
They just have a guy on a wheel machine just pedaling in the back.
Yeah.
It's
What I wanna
just
know-
a reminder, right? It's a reminder of like how we
It's
got
a reminder. It's a reminder of how incompetent the people surrounding Joe Biden are as well. That you could be his speechwriter at this point in his presidency and not know, just instinctively know when you're writing, all right, electoral, he can't do that
Too
word.
many syllables.
He can't do that word.
It's totally right. I mean, having written a lot of speeches for people over the years, like you have to have some idea of the capability
Intuitively.
of the person that you're writing for. You know, I mean, if they're not perfectly eloquent, you don't throw like 7-syllable words in there back to back and try to figure it out. For him, I guess electoral is
I feel like he
one you gotta
stumbled on
look
that
for.
one before. I think that's not
Yeah.
my first time seeing him stumble on that. And insurrection shouldn't be in there either, FYI.
Yeah, right.
It's our reaction to that was kind of reflected. Like you could kind of feel. I tweeted this out last night, and I stand by it. When Joe Biden sat down, I was like, "That was it. That was
yeah.
That's what he got in exchange for giving up a presidential nomination." It was like, "Yay, Joe!" But it wasn't really that great. Like the reception I'm talking about by the audience, I didn't feel the love. Like I didn't feel like they hated him. I wasn't like, oh, no one's clapping. But I just kind of expected more. I thought we'd see tons of people crying. Like, there was a shot with Chris Coons before he took the stage, Biden. And this kind of is representative of how I felt watching the audience all night. Watch this, shot 11.
On behalf behalf of our Democratic Party, for your loyalty in fighting for our democratic values, we thank you. And on behalf of Delaware, thank you, Joe, and God bless you. We love you. We love Joe. We love Joe. We love Joe. We love Joe.
Did you see her face?
Forced. With a woman doing the side eye right at the end.
Yes.
Like, come on, it's even too much for me. Yeah, it was a retirement party. I mean, they did everything short of hand him the gold watch. You know?
Yes.
And I was thinking this when I was watching it, the exact same thing that you're bringing up, Megyn, is this was supposed to be like, some like reverent moment and like capstoning this remarkable political career and expressing gratitude. But again, like Holmes mentioned, the cynicism just seeped through all of it where it seems so fake. I thought when I was watching that of the moment when George H.W. Bush passed away, and then you saw Bob Dole was brought in to the rotunda where George H.W. Bush was in waiting, and he had an aide lift him so that he could salute him. And you had more reverence shown by one person than a room of 10,000 people were capable of, because that was just fake. It was just fake.
Yeah, they just don't care, right? I mean, it's on to the next. It really is on. It's all a game to them. It's on to the next. And I, as an aside, wouldn't you have loved to be a fly on the wall when someone came in and had to brief the sitting president of the United States of his speaking slot?
I mean, when Richard Ben Kramer profiled Joe Biden in the 1988 race and
Excellent
what it
book.
takes, it's a great book. I love it. I recommended it to Smug, and now he recommends it to everybody else. I just don't think that he could have imagined that Biden's career would end on a Monday night after 11:30 p.m.
Yeah. Oh God, that is tragic.
I don't think you could have ever 50 years in politics, and that's what he gets. He did it to himself. He did it to himself.
Couldn't even really get
Hung
the
on to
chant going. You can like
I know.
oh, we love Joe with the eye roll. It was so telling. Although not to the people on MSNBC who to close the show as we began it with the fakeness of what we witnessed last night, it gavel to gavel. Here's Rachel Maddow.
I just feel like in America, in my 51 years of American life, I don't know of another big, civic, earnest, heartfelt, emotional expression of thanks. That we congratulate one another. We have parades for heroes and we celebrate people's victories, but a celebration of thanks. We appreciate and love you for your civic virtue and for what you've done to our country. I mean, since we have had parades welcoming home people who have fought in war, and it has been generations since we have done that, I don't know anything else like that.
Oh my God, you guys.
I don't even know where to
they still have those parades. You just don't show up.
No, she shows up. She's just holding a picket sign.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not watching it, right? I mean, it's this narrative building that happens on the left in their media apparatchik. That is a narrative building about what you're seeing that you didn't actually see.
Totally.
Right. And it's even more jarring if you were, one of the few that actually had to sit through the entire 45 minutes to get to the end of that and being like, well, what you've seen here is just an outpouring of love and support, which is not what it was. Right. It just wasn't.
No, it's improv fiction. Most people watch improv comedy. Democrats every single day do improv fiction, and some of them do it better than others.
It's the opposite of what they normally do, which is when we see a man, they tell us it's a woman and we should ignore our eyes. And now we have them doing the opposite. We see a lack of enthusiasm and they tell us we saw enthusiasm. I've got to end on this one. You speak of Rachel Maddow. She's normally at the protest with a placard. Could be. Yeah. She shouldn't try that in Chicago because look what happened to this guy.
Hurting man. We were hurting man. You're all fucking piece of shit. They made me shit my pants. They made me shit my pants. What the fuck did I do? What the fuck did I do?
The Blaze is doing a roast. He pooped his pants.
They're treating Joe Biden like this? This is supposed to be his retirement party.
Oh, yeah. Just another well-reasoned young man out for civic duty.
The final indignity.
Duty. Operative word being duty. Well done. You guys. A pleasure. That was a special one, you guys. That was a special one. Thank you.
It was so good. It's so good to see you again, Megyn. We'll do this as many times as you want to. We always have such a blast.
Awesome. TV continued. We'll see you guys soon. And don't forget to check out the guys on their platforms too. It's youtube.com. What is it? / I had it in prompter. Now I can't see it. Ruthless podcast. There we go. Tonight we're going to hear from the Obamas, Barack and Michelle, as well as Second Gentleman Doug, as well as Chuck Schumer. We'll bring you all the highlights and lowlights tomorrow. I'll see you then.